This is Kian N Ardalan. He wrote a book called 11th Cycle, and the rumour is that it was so dark, so grim, so grimdark that the publishers refused to publish it. It got locked up inside a basement, double and triple chained to stop it ever escaping into the world. But the rumours said that if you say 11th Cycle into a mirror 11 times, you meet the ghostly spectre of the author himself. I'm about to test this out. 11th Cycle. 11th Cycle. 11th Cycle. 11th Cycle. 11th Cycle. 11th Cycle. Begone, foul demon!
I'm still here, man.
Hi guys, welcome back to Hobbit Hole Books. My name is Matt, also known as Miggins on Twitter, and I'd like to thank you all once again for indulging me in my semi-madness with my cold opens. I have a lot of fun doing them, and a big thank you to Kian N Ardalan, the author of 11th Cycle, for joining me in today's funny open. In case you didn't realise, we are going to be talking about the book 11th Cycle by Kian N Ardalan. This was the joint first in my top 10 books of 2022, and there are so many reasons why, and this book has taken the indie world, the fantasy world in general, by storm, at least if you go by my circle on Twitter and Discord through the various groups and friends that I've made. It's all I seem to be hearing about, and for good reason. I didn't want to do a traditional review, right? I wanted to just share with you my experience, just talk a little bit more from the heart, and give you 3 simple reasons why this book just absolutely changed my life. Now, before we dive fully into it, please remember to like, subscribe, share this video. It all really helps. I'm on 218 subscribers right now, which is blowing my mind. I've got lots of exciting things coming, lots of exciting plans, so don't miss out. Stick around and do all that lovely stuff. And yes, I did just say how this book changed my life, and I don't want this to be seen as some clickbait thing, so we're going to talk a little bit briefly about what I mean by that. I think in today's world where we do have a lot of clickbait titles, and yes, sometimes I do, engage in that to an extent because that's how the algorithm works, and yes, I do want to get my videos out there so that I can interact with more of you, but this isn't that, I promise. This book is not about changing my life in the sense that my life is completely incomparably different from before. I think that we've got the wrong definition of change. We sort of think of change as a before and after, and the two are just completely different. Like you put a side-by-side photo, you're unrecognizable, right? I think change can be more subtle than that. I would say that I am a different person since I read this book. Not in the sense that my life or who I am is completely changed, that I am not the same person that I was. For all intents and purposes, I am. But I feel like I've gained more from my perspective. I've gained more of a perspective on myself. I've learned things about myself whilst reading this book. And so even though my life is pretty much the same, it has enabled me to see things in a much richer way, and so that is why this book changed my life. But I'm going to give you 3 kind of simple reasons why I just love this book so much and why it did change my life. First of all, because it made me reflect. Second of all, because it made me hope. And third of all, And perhaps most importantly, it made me feel seen. You know, I think it's been wonderful to see this flourishing of mental health and the conversations that have come around that within the fantasy community. I think it's a perfect genre to kind of explore these issues within a world that we can separate ourselves from. But I also think that there's still this stigma attached to mental health. There's still a reluctance to have these conversations that we're starting to have. And Kian, he dives straight in. You know, this is a heavy book. And not just because it's a hefty tome. I mean, that's the sound of it on the floor. Sorry, Kian, I did just drop your book. If maybe I'll just edit that part out. But it's not just heavy in physical weight. It's heavy in emotional weight. Every word carries a meaning in a way that it sets it apart. I'm not going to say that I've not encountered this before. I think there are authors with an emotional resonance to this degree, and it always astonishes me when authors accomplish this because it's very, very difficult. But this, you know, this book, it really has changed my life. But what is this book about? I'll tell you a little bit. We'll just go to the broader perspective because you guys might want to know a few of the details. It is about 800 pages long, but they're long pages. I mean, the writing isn't particularly big or small. It's a fairly easy prose to read. It's somewhere between a Patrick Rothfuss and a Johnny Wirtz, and then on the other hand, Brandon Sanderson. On this scaleometer, it's probably more towards the Patrick Rothfuss and Wirtz side of things, which I really liked, but also it felt engaging. It wasn't a challenge to try and wrap my mind around what it was trying to say, and that's not to sort of put down any of those other authors, and I love especially Johnny Wirt's writing and her style, but it does take kind of more brain power and a more subtle reading of things, whereas you can still just read this book without having to think about the act of reading, whereas with someone like Wirtz, then it's a more kind of deliberate act, if that makes sense. So it kind of sits on the somewhere between just over the, I'd say the 60% sort of flowery prose mark. And there were some wonderful, beautiful passages in this. I wish that I'd highlighted some. I do have the Kindle edition, and if I ever read it again, I want to bookmark. And there's one particular passage, if you look back, I'm not necessarily going to read it again. I did read it on my top 10 books of 2022, the number one books video. I'll link that up there. And it made me cry reading it again and just thinking about it. I mean, we're talking about this book changing my life, right? Well, this one passage kind of, it really tore me to pieces because I've been doing a lot of, self-reflecting, a lot of work, and with the mental health struggles that I go through, it is perhaps easier for me than some others to do that, which is both a blessing and a curse, in that I'm always kind of very self-aware of everything that I get wrong and very hyper-aware of that. And I do, in a way, have this sense of that I need, and I do need to be better, but I have this almost like complex about it, and this book kind of took me by the hand and said, you don't need to be that. It's okay to be who you are, a man in the process of change. So that's something that Sanderson taught me as well with Dalinar, and that's why these stories resonate. And even now, just thinking about it, I just get so emotional because it takes me back. In this book, despite all the darkness in it, it is about self-care and love and pulling yourself out of the darkness. Not in a pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of way that, there is a sort of gritty self-determination streak in this book, particularly in one of the characters, but it's not the only way to get yourself out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to pull this back. What is this book about? So it's about 800 pages. The prose is, I was going to say mid-tier. It's absolutely not mid-tier, but in terms of difficulty, it's in the sort of middle. And we follow the world of Menethria, right? I'll put the map up, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful map. I'll show you here, but I'll put the map up on the screen. And we have barely even kind of covered this world in this book, and there's so much world building here. It's incredible, but I need to focus on this, Matthew. Focus. Boom. So this world is really big and expansive, and there's basically it consists of these elders in this mountain called Mount Mornion. It's really bizarre and trippy, and they're these kind of eldritch beings, these gods that rule from above, and they've created this land. And the sun is called the Elder Eye, and I don't quite know what's going on with that, really, the specifics of it yet. We're still learning about that, which I love. And this world is sort of surrounded by mist, and this mist encroaches on the world, and it's separated into cycles, right? So there's this time, there's this angel, the angel of time, and he kind of floats across. You can see it on the map, I'll point it out. And he kind of floats across, and the angel was the first one to create time, and within these cycles, what happens is this great evil comes, and the mist kind of encroaches in, and we don't really know much about this great evil and what we've yet to face, but it's very ominous, and there's a lot of darkness to this world. And each cycle, this hero called the Seed basically comes, is basically the son, the seed of the elder kind of king, I've forgotten his name, but the one in the mountain, Mount Mornia. And each cycle kind of resets in time, resets itself. And so we've got these cycles where the 11th cycle comes in. We join in on the 11th cycle. And so it's this kind of bleak, dreary world. And there's this really kind of interesting take of this religious sect of these people, when they die, they're kind of forgotten. And there's a sect that basically, like, they want to remember these people, and they're treated as outcasts, and I want to know more about that. It's a very intriguing world, but essentially we follow 4 characters in this world. 4 characters that I will never ever forget. Erythil, Delilah, Chroma, and Nora. Each of these characters come to life in their own right. We ground ourselves within their stories, and they each bring something to the book. You know, there's a lot of bleakness, as I said, but that brings me to the second point. There's also hope. And I think that's what makes this book stand out. It is a dark world. Perhaps one of the darkest I've ever read. These characters go through things that I've never read in books before. Even books that I thought, wow, these are really kind of taking it really to the grim. This goes further and deeper, but not in an obtuse way. It's a very careful and stylized way that it's done. It's done with the utmost degree of care and respect, and comes from a place of love and understanding. And so this book, you really need to be in the right frame of mind to read this, you know. And I strongly urge you, listen to those content warnings. If you are not in the space to read this book, that's okay. This book will always be here, and you will always find yourself able to come back to this book. Get the help you need, and when you're in a better place, when you're ready to move forward, to take that step, first of all, congratulations, you made it. You're doing it. And then this book, and probably by then the sequels, it's going to be waiting for you. And boy, is it a book. But even within all this bleakness, there is a beauty. There's a beauty to this world that's almost indescribable. It's like how a black and white movie, it plays with light, and that's where the beauty comes from that, you know. And this book plays in those shades. And there's a almost perverse kind of beauty to that. It draws you in, it beguiles you, and this world, it feels like a dark fairy tale almost. It's inspired by the Dark Souls games, which I haven't played, but if it's anything like this, you know, I would love it, I think. because it's just such a unique way of building the world. We have a lot of these epigraphs which kind of give us a lot of the world building, little snippets and little hints and foreshadowing of the future, and it has been done before, you know, with Sanderson, but not quite like this. It hasn't quite captured that feel of we're learning about the world through these epigraphs. I mean, a lot of stuff with Sanderson, it's felt like he's hiding stuff in the epigraphs, and yes, Kian does that as well, but it's really hard to describe. But it really captures that feel of you found a hidden scroll. And for example, I'm playing Gods of War right now, and there's kind of like hidden kind of things, scrolls that you can find in your diary that you can read, right? And it feels like you found that, and that's why a lot of the world building goes on, apart from up front. So we covered point 1, which is basically it makes me reflect. Point 2, it makes me hope. You know, because even in the darkness, these characters fight. They fight for their lives. They fight with all their strength, and you are willing them on. And by the end, you see that even in the darkness, there's still hope. It gives me hope that if these characters can come through some of the worst things imaginable, then maybe I can too. Maybe I'm not so bad after all. And then that comes to point 3, which is it makes me feel seen. We kind of discussed this a little bit, but this covers topics that I've not seen done in fantasy before, especially not in a gratuitous way. I mean, it's not really a spoiler, it's in the content. I want to say, you know, there's self-harm in this book, there's assault in this book. It's really kind of almost look away. You can't even read it at times because your heart is breaking over and over for these people, and in some aspects of their lives you may know what they've gone through. I certainly know some of Delilah's journey, what she's been through, and it really breaks you. But then what Kian does is he doesn't leave you broken. He builds you back up again, which brings us back to the hope. And, you know, I loved the world because it's intriguing, there's this trippy aspects, there's all the things a fantasy fan will want, but it also feels real, and perhaps oddly more real than most other worlds I've encountered, in the sense that in fantasy worlds, there's often the poor and the peasants in this medieval feudal structure, right? And for some people, the world is broken, and for some of them, it's not. And some people you see, oh, they lead a great life, or oh, the farm boy gets the girl and he saves the world and he lives a happy, fulfilled life by the end. And everything's happy, clappy, hallelujah, you know, wishy-washy. I mean, I'm exaggerating there. I love some of those books, right? Some of those are some of my favourite, but they don't feel necessarily real, and I think that's part of why we love them. They're escapism. But this world, the entire world is broken, figuratively and literally. Even the beings at the top are broken. Nothing is kind of away from that. Nothing is hidden from that. And I love that. Everything is broken, but it doesn't mean that it can't be used, that it can't be fixed, or that it needs to be fixed. I think it's an important thing to be said. There's this presumption that things need to be fixed. There isn't that presumption here. And yeah. So I hope that made sense, my little ramble. But if you take nothing away from this, just remember these 3 points. It made me reflect. It made me hope. And most importantly, perhaps, it made me feel seen. I don't think that's going to matter for a lot of you out there. Sometimes we feel like we're screaming, that nobody can hear us. Well, this book is going to make you feel seen. And that's why it changed my life. Thank you guys for watching. This was a little bit more raw, a little bit more emotional, a little bit kind of more on the dour side than we're used to. But I think this book kind of deserves that gravitas. It's a wonderful, wonderful read. I can't wait to re-listen in audio. And Kian is a wonderful, wonderful author who I hope to have on the channel very, very soon to discuss this. I'll put the links down below to Amazon, links to purchase, all that below, all the ways to find Kian. He's got his own Discord, which is popping off, guys. And yeah, so thank you for watching. I hope that you took something from this. I hope that you liked this kind of different style of review, a little bit more personal, a little bit more reflective. And yeah, please like, subscribe, share, comment. Have you read this book? Did you love it? Anything. I love interacting with you all, and it all really helps. Hopefully I'll be back with more madness, more kind of energy and chaos, and more about my exciting plans for the future. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Good morning, good noon, and good night. I don't know why I said that, but we're going with it.